Have you ever walked away from a conversation and wondered, why does it feel like people aren't as excited to see me as they used to be? Maybe your phone doesn't ring as often. Maybe your children seem a little distracted when you talk. Or your grandchildren don't stay as long as they used to. And deep down, there's a quiet question that lingers. Did I do something wrong? If you've ever felt that way, I want you to know something very important right from the start. This isn't about your age. It's not about your wrinkles, your gray hair, or how fast you move. None of those things push people away. What truly shapes how people respond to us, especially as we grow older, is something much more subtle. It's the energy we bring into a room, the way we speak, the habits we repeat without even noticing. And the truth is, many of these habits are completely unintentional. Over the years, I've seen something interesting. Some women become even more magnetic with age. People are drawn to them. They feel warm, peaceful, wise. You want to sit near them, listen to them, be around them. But others, slowly, quietly, begin to feel harder to be around. Not because they're bad people, not because they've done anything terrible, but because of small patterns that build up over time. Today, we're going to gently uncover a few of those habits. Not to criticize, but to bring awareness, because once you see them, you can change them. And when you do, something beautiful happens. People start coming closer again. Let's begin with something very common. Something almost all of us have done at one point or another. There's a woman I once knew named Margaret. She was in her early 80s, sharp as ever, with a lifetime of stories. She had raised a family, worked hard, and carried herself with strength. But over time, something shifted. Every conversation with her began to sound the same. The weather is terrible today. My knees are killing me again. Nothing is like it used to be. At first, people listened with care. They nodded. They showed sympathy. But slowly, something changed. Visits became shorter. Phone calls became less frequent. Not because people didn't love her, but because being around her started to feel heavy. And this is where the first habit quietly takes root. It's constant complaining. Now, let me be very clear. Life isn't easy as we get older. There are aches, losses, frustrations. You've earned the right to speak about them. This isn't about pretending everything is perfect. But when complaints become the main tone of your conversations, it changes how people feel around you. People are naturally drawn to light, to warmth, to a sense of ease. And when every interaction feels like stepping into a storm of negativity, even the people who love you most may start to pull back, not because they want to, but because they don't know how to carry that weight. The beautiful thing is, this habit is one of the easiest to transform. It doesn't require you to ignore your struggles. It simply asks you to shift how you express them. Instead of saying, "Everything hurts these days," you might say, "Some days are harder than others, but I'm grateful for how far my body has carried me." Do you feel the difference? One closes the door, the other opens it. That small shift from complaint to perspective can completely change the energy you bring into a room, and people feel that instantly. Now, there's another habit that often walks right alongside this one. It's quieter, but just as powerful. As we age, our bodies naturally become a bigger part of our daily lives. Doctor appointments, medications, new aches that weren't there before. It's completely normal to think about your health more. But sometimes, without realizing it, those thoughts begin to take over our conversations. There was another woman, Susan, who had a kind heart and a gentle smile. But every time you spoke with her, the conversation would quickly turn to her latest symptoms. her blood pressure, her medication changes, a new pain she was worried about. Again, people listened. Of course they did. They cared. But over time, those conversations began to feel emotionally heavy. Her daughter once admitted quietly, "I love my mom, but sometimes I hesitate to call because I know I'll hang up feeling worried." And that's the second habit, talking too much about health issues. Now, this doesn't mean you should hide what you're going through. Your experiences matter. Your pain is real. Sharing is human. But when health becomes the center of every conversation, it can make others feel helpless. They can't fix it. They don't know what to say. And it reminds them, sometimes painfully, of things they're not ready to face. The key here is balance. You can share an update about your health and then gently shift the conversation. Ask about your granddaughter's school. Talk about a memory that still makes you smile. Share something you noticed on your morning walk. Because you are so much more than your aches and your medications. You are a lifetime of stories, of wisdom, of love, of laughter. And when you allow those parts of you to come forward, people don't feel drained. They feel connected. They feel uplifted. They feel like they're sitting with someone who has truly lived. There's something deeply powerful about that kind of presence. It doesn't come from pretending life is easy. It comes from choosing to bring light into the room, even when life is hard. And when you do that, something begins to shift. Conversations feel easier. People linger a little longer. They lean in instead of pulling away. And as we continue, there's another subtle habit that says more about us than words ever could. Because sometimes, without saying a single word, we're already telling people how we feel about ourselves. I once knew a woman named Eduarda. Everyone called her Edie. She had been elegant in her younger years, the kind of woman who never left the house without her hair done, her clothes pressed, and a quiet confidence in the way she carried herself. But somewhere along the way, she stopped trying. It didn't happen all at once. It was gradual. First, she stopped caring about matching her clothes. Then she wore the same sweater for days. Then she stopped brushing her hair regularly. When someone gently asked if she was feeling okay, she would laugh it off and say, "Oh, honey, at my age, who am I trying to impress?" And on the surface, that might sound harmless, even practical. But underneath, something deeper was happening. Because the third habit that quietly pushes people away is neglecting personal appearance. Now, this isn't about vanity. It's not about chasing youth or trying to look like you're 30 again. It's about something much more meaningful than that. It's about self-respect. The way you present yourself to the world sends a silent message long before you ever speak. When you take the time to wear clean clothes, to brush your hair, to care for your hygiene, you're telling the world and yourself, "I still matter." And people feel that. Edie's daughter once shared something that stayed with me. She said, "It's not that I care what mom wears. It's that when she stops caring about herself, it feels like she's slowly disappearing." That's the part no one says out loud. When we let go of ourselves, even in small ways, others begin to feel that distance. Not because they're judging us, but because they sense a kind of quiet withdrawal from life. But here's the beautiful truth. It doesn't take much to turn that around. You don't need expensive clothes. You don't need makeup or perfection. Just a little care, a fresh blouse, clean shoes, a touch of fragrance you love. A moment in the mirror where you say, "I'm still here." Because you are. And when you begin to show that again, people respond differently. They smile more. They engage more. They see you not just as someone aging, but as someone still fully alive. And that kind of presence is incredibly powerful. Now, there's another habit that often comes from a completely different place, Not from giving up, but from having so much to say, so much experience, so many thoughts, so many stories waiting to be shared. And yet, it can have the opposite effect of what we intend. There was a woman named Susan, warm, lively, full of energy. She loved her family deeply and always had something to add to every conversation. But there was one small thing she did that slowly created distance. Whenever someone began to speak, she would jump in halfway through. "Oh, I know exactly what you mean. That's not how it happened. Let me tell you what you should do." She didn't mean to interrupt. In her mind, she was connecting, she was relating, she was helping. But over time, her son began to speak less when he visited. Her granddaughter stopped sharing stories from school. Conversations became shorter, quieter. One day, her son gently said, "Mom, sometimes it feels like you're not really listening, like you're just waiting for your turn to talk." That moment stayed with her, because the fourth habit that quietly pushes people away is interrupting or talking over others. And this one can be especially hard to notice in ourselves. It often comes from excitement, from wanting to contribute, from a fear that if we don't speak right away, we might forget what we wanted to say. But to the person on the other side, it can feel like their voice doesn't matter. And when people feel unheard, they slowly stop sharing. Not all at once, just little by little. Here's something gentle to try the next time you're in a conversation. When you feel the urge to jump in, pause for just a moment. Take a slow breath. Let the other person finish their thought completely. You might be surprised at what happens. They relax. They open up more. They feel safe. And when you finally speak, your words carry more weight, more presence, more meaning. Listening, true listening, is one of the greatest gifts you can offer someone. It says, "You matter. I'm here with you." And the beautiful thing is, when you give that gift, it almost always comes back to you. People begin to lean in again. They want to talk. They want to share. They feel drawn to your calm, steady presence. And as we move deeper into this, there's another habit that can be even more subtle. Something that doesn't sound harsh on the surface, but over time, quietly changes how people feel around you. Because not all negativity sounds loud or obvious. Sometimes it slips into our words so gently that we don't even recognize it ourselves. There was a man named Frank, who everyone in his neighborhood used to enjoy talking to. He had a dry sense of humor, a sharp memory, and stories that could make you laugh for hours. But as the years passed, something began to change in the way he spoke. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't complain loudly or constantly. Instead, it showed up in small, repeated phrases. "Everything is so expensive these days. People just don't have manners anymore. The world isn't what it used to be." Individually, those comments didn't seem like much. In fact, many people would even agree with him. But over time, those little remarks started to build a certain atmosphere around him. Conversations felt heavier, less joyful, less alive. At family gatherings, his granddaughter once whispered, "Grandpa used to be fun. Now I feel tired after talking to him." And that's the fifth habit, subtle but constant negativity. This one is especially tricky because it doesn't feel like complaining. It feels like observation, like truth, like experience speaking, and in many ways it is. You have seen more than most people. You've lived through decades of change, challenges, and growth. Your perspective is valuable. But the way that perspective is expressed makes all the difference. When those small negative remarks become a pattern, they begin to shape the emotional tone of every interaction. And people, especially younger ones, start to associate your presence with a feeling they don't quite enjoy. Not because they don't love you, but because they're protecting their own sense of peace. Here's the shift that can change everything. Instead of saying, things aren't what they used to be, you might say, I've seen so many changes in my life, and it's amazing how much the world keeps evolving. Do you feel the difference again? One closes the door. The other invites curiosity. One feels heavy. The other feels open. This doesn't mean ignoring reality or pretending everything is perfect. It simply means choosing to bring perspective instead of discouragement, because your voice carries weight. Your words linger longer than you might think, and when your words begin to offer calm, wisdom, and even a little hope, people don't just listen. They remember how you made them feel. Now, there's one final habit I want to talk about. And this one can be the most sensitive of all, because it comes from something that is actually very beautiful, your experience. You've lived through things many others haven't. You've learned lessons the hard way. You've seen what works and what doesn't. And over time, it's natural to feel confident in what you know. But sometimes, without realizing it, that confidence turns into something else. There was a gentleman named Richard. He had lived a full, remarkable life. He had raised a family, built a career, and overcome challenges that would have broken many people. When his grandchildren were younger, they adored sitting with him, listening to his stories, asking for advice. But as they grew older, something changed. Whenever they shared an idea, he would respond quickly, "I've already been through that. That's not how it works. You'll understand when you're older." He didn't mean to dismiss them. In his mind, he was helping. He wanted to guide them, protect them from mistakes. But what they felt was something different. They felt unheard. One of his grandchildren once said quietly, "Grandpa doesn't really listen anymore. He just tells you what he already knows." And over time, they stopped asking. That's the sixth habit, acting like you know everything. And again, this one doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from experience, from a desire to share wisdom. But wisdom has a very special quality. It doesn't need to prove itself. True wisdom listens first. It stays curious. It leaves space for others to speak, to explore, to discover. Because when you approach a conversation as if you already know the answer, it closes the door before the other person even steps in. But when you say something as simple as, "That's interesting. Tell me more," everything changes. The conversation opens, the connection deepens, and suddenly, you're not just someone with answers. You're someone people feel safe opening up to. And that kind of presence is rare. It's magnetic. It draws people in without effort. Because at the end of the day, people don't just want advice. They want to feel seen. They want to feel heard. They want to feel like their voice matters too. And here's the most beautiful part of all of this. None of these habits are permanent. They're not who you are. They're simply patterns, small, repeated behaviors that can be gently reshaped at any age, in any moment, with just a little awareness and a willingness to grow. Because growing older doesn't mean becoming less of who you are. It means becoming more refined, more intentional, more present. And when you begin to replace heaviness with light, interruption with listening, certainty with curiosity, something quiet but powerful begins to happen. People come closer again, not out of obligation, but because being around you feels good. It feels peaceful. It feels real. And that is something truly special. So if something you heard today touched your heart, even just a little, take that as a sign. Not of something you did wrong, but of something you're ready to transform. I'd love to hear from you. What's one small shift you feel inspired to make after listening today? Share it in the comments below. Your voice matters here, And if this message spoke to you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Elderly Faith Journey. There's so much more ahead, more encouragement, more wisdom, more reminders that your life right now still holds deep meaning and beauty. Thank you for spending this time with me. And always remember, it's never too late to become the kind of presence people are grateful to have in their lives.